Welcome to the Backyard Professor Live. I am here with Mormonish, and we have a terrific show for you guys tonight. All in black. There's your hint. Okay, thanks for watching our show. I hope you all have a good evening. We'll catch up to you next week. Oh, wait. I'm an hour and a half ahead of time, aren't I? I'm time traveling. Hey, Mormonish, what's with the gimmicky hat there, young man?
Oh, I'm just wearing this for effect, I guess, tonight. We're going to be talking about the translation of the Book of Mormon. So what says translation of the Book of Mormon more than a top hat?
Ooh, I hope you got the stone or the rock.
I've got the stones to go with it.
He's got the stones to go. Oh my God, we are off to a great start already.
That new video of you guys with
the stones. See right there.
There you go with the scholar.
And I have my crystal ball tonight. So
I've got my Spencer W. Kimball magnifying glass.
Yeah, these even work. See, you can put it in there and go, Carrie is going to go on a rant.
What?
That is impossible. I never go on a rant. How dare you try to visualize something like that? I'm going to throw the Book of Mormon just for that.
I see it too.
Well,
shoot, works.
I guess you have the true prophecy. So, okay. Hey, we are really excited to bring to you, our audience, this incredible information. But before we do, on the church essay on the translation of the Book of Mormon, we recognize now, we've been talking for the last hour or so behind the scenes, Mormonish has produced a video with a Book of Mormon scholar just in the last day or two, and it is causing consternation, decimation, and ululation, depending on who you are in the audience. You guys want to tell us just a little bit about that video, which is going to dovetail very nicely in with our video tonight?
I think so too. I'm hoping that our guest, whose name is Dr. John Lundwall, will actually pop into the chat. He said he was going to try to watch because he loves your show. But it is an episode. He is... it basically talks about literary constructs in all of the Americas, not just Mesoamerica, and the civilization that would be needed to produce something like the Book of Mormon. And he just literally dismantles the whole thing. It's a lengthy episode. It's over 2 hours long. It's a scholarly episode, but it has just blown everything out of the water for Mormonish. We got so many positive comments at the beginning. Then it seemed like the apologists discover it. And now we're getting comments like, what would you say, Landon?
You guys suck.
You're horrible. The Book of Mormon is true. Yes, you guys are idiots. Yeah, we're now getting those kind of comments. So that tells me that we're sort of onto something. So if anybody would like to check it out, it's our most recent episode with the wonderful Dr. John Lundwall. And I think Carrie's going to have him on too, because this research is just extremely interesting and innovative and different.
And he's already said he's going to come on. I know some of you have said, I want to hear points 3, 4, and 5. And he's told us that he's gonna work on those and get those ready so we can put those out as well. So
it's exciting.
Yep. Even Doug Vincent recognizes, even though he's not a scholar either, so none of us are, the whole text of the Book of Mormon is anachronistic in the most fundamental
That's
way.
it.
There
That's
you have
it. The Book of Mormon itself is the biggest evidence against the Book of Mormon. Ironically, wrap your brain around that.
Barry Richens is in the audience. Awesome. Don Smith, welcome. William Charles, you were first. I will recognize you officially. Tom Miller, Dan Vogel, the man, Dan the man. Newton Lemos, good to see you again. When Wanda Anthony, I saw Don Smith, Mark Crispin. Yeah, baby. Or we could, for tonight's episode, we could really shake up everyone, including the apologists, and say, yeah, Book of Mormon. No, that doesn't go. Forget it. Never mind. I didn't say that. Mosia. Yeah. Steve Boland. Good to see you. Anyway, all of the Joe Walker, Daisy B. Good to see you. Tim Rathbone. He's always here. Tim Rathbone is so awesome. I'm just saying. Don't tell him I said that. It'll swell his already fat head, but he'll get over it, I'm sure. And then let's see. I'm missing two people, Rebecca Biblioteca and Landon Brophy in the chat. So would you guys mind staying out of the chat and just come onto the screen here? Woo! So
can I just say that I love to be on the show, but I do miss the chat when I'm on because I have so much fun over there and I can't back and forth. So I miss it.
My chat group, I mean, I know this is going to come across me sounding biased, but my chat group is one of the very stellar chat groups in all of YouTube land. So there's a shout out to everybody in the chat. So we have a lot of fun. So, Radio Free Mormon. Did he show up? Yes. Yes, the dress code is formal. Absolutely. I was going to put on my black tux, but it's 101 here and I'm just cooking to death. So anyway, okay. So let's realize one thing and then I'll let you guys get started. The entire Mormon religion hangs on tithing, or the Book of Abraham. No, I mean the SEC rule. No, that's not it. Not the SEC ruling. What is it? The Joseph Smith translation of the Bible? No, that's not it. Changing the D&C revelation. No, that's not it. Treasure digging. Ooh, wait. Now we're getting warmer. Yeah, baby. Book of Mormon translation. Why is this such a big deal? Because Joseph Smith said it's not for the world to know about the particulars of the Book of Mormon and how it was translated, that part of it. Just read the text. But he never had the prophetic insight to see today and how his entire story is dismantled. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. So, lady and gentlemen, and men and brethren and sisterin of the audience and the chat group, let's get going. Give us the goods on this Book of Mormon translation, you guys.
All right. I think everyone that's post-Mormon has already heard the rock in the hat, knows about the rock in the hat and the translation process, even though it is now being argued among some of the LDS people after it didn't happen, then it did happen. Now we're back to it didn't happen. So we wanted to just bring out some things today. We can talk tight translation, loose translation, all of that stuff, but we just wanted to kind of have fun with this one and talk about some of the fun things that happened in the translation of the Book of Mormon.
Maven is in the house. Sorry to interrupt you. Maven is in the house.
Maven, all right.
Maven, baby. And Gail Capson's here. Gail, good to see you again. And Gail Planet Jane. And Mortensen, Lee Mortensen. Sorry, I'm sorry. I love my chat.
No.
Anyway, it's all
Maybe
good.
we should just move to the chat. Forget the show. Let's just chat. What do you think?
I have done that before, and it goes over very, very well. It really does. But this is a good topic. Maybe we can chat after you guys share some of these phenomenal ideas. So.
Yep, and as Don said, a loose translation is a tragedy. Yeah, that was John Lundwell's argument for the Book of Mormon.
An act of violence, remember? Yeah.
Yep, wow. John just joined us. John is in the chat.
Good. We've been talking about you, John.
Welcome. We are not worthy, and yet you are here. Thank you, good buddy. Yes. We were just talking about that. Oh, he loves your hat, Landon.
Yeah.
Here, let's put him up there for proof he was here, unlike Joseph Smith and the Angel Moroni. So there we go.
Oh, we're gonna get there for sure.
So
That
yeah,
was good.
if you want to see tight and loose translation of the Book of Mormon, watch the Mormonish episode with John, because he covers that pretty well, and that's why we thought that was a really good. His words on it were really good. So we decided we were just going to take this and we're going to read through the essay on the translation. It's not long, but it's not one of the shorter ones. So it's got some places. There's some places it gets a little weird, but there's a lot of things in this essay that just stand out that you just got to go, oh, wait up. What is that? So let's get started. Carrie, you want to pull up the first slide? And
It is.
Yep. Rebecca, is that one you can read?
No, let's let someone else read. I was out in the sun all day. I have like sun blindness.
Hey, Newton wants to know if you're going to translate anything in that hat tonight. I predict yes.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I come up with here as we get going through. So there's several translations we want to talk about, but we all know this. We'll start out. Joseph Smith said the Book of Mormon was the most correct of any book on earth and the keystone of our religion, and a man would get nearer to God by abiding by its precepts than by any other book. The Book of Mormon came into the world through a series of miraculous events, and it certainly did. Also, a bunch of really weird events as well, and we're going to show that as well.
That the church hid until just recently, by the way.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. This one, I really like this statement. Much can be known about the coming forth of the English text of the Book of Mormon through a careful study of statements made by Joseph Smith, his scribes, and others closely associated with the translation of the Book of Mormon. One thing you find as you start studying this is the statements are so confusing and so contradictory to each other that really not much can be learned. That they're sitting there arguing whether it was translated by a hat or by a breastplate or through a loose translation or a tight translation. Goggles, yeah, it's like we don't know how he translated it. Every eyewitness gives a different scenario of, oh, I saw this, I experienced this, and yet they all contradict each other. So that's the thing that we can see most in the Book of Mormon. So let's go to the next slide, Carrie. You want to read that one, Carrie?
There's the important one. By the gift and power of God. I used to think this was always so impressive, but now notice how vague it is. It doesn't say a thing. Joseph Smith reported that on the evening of September 21st, 1823, while he prayed in the upper room of the Salt Lake Temple, of his log home in Palmyra, New York, an angel who called himself Moroni appeared and told Joseph that God had a work for you to do. He informed Joseph that there was a book deposited written upon gold plates, giving an account of the former inhabitants of this continent and the source from whence they sprang. The book could be found in a hill not far from the Smith family farm. This was no ordinary history, for it contained the fullness of the everlasting gospel as, and I can't see the bottom part.
Delivered by the Savior. So
as delivered by the Savior. Hold
Landon
on.
has the essay memorized.
That's right. No, I actually looked in my hat to see that.
There you go. See, translated Reformed English back into English.
That's right. That's right. This is church lawyer English into back into what it really means. This is actually first thing you notice is they called it a history, which remember we just recently they're now saying it's not really a history, it's more of a spiritual book, but now they're saying it's no ordinary history. Right. So it's certainly a history. They're claiming it's a history, even in their essay. They're claiming that this is a historical document. But
I want to respond real quick to John. John Lundwall has a question. Could someone create an AI image of Joseph Smith translating whilst wearing a hat, cape, and goggles? John, if you'll come on to my show, I'll make that image for you because
there it is.
There you go. So Back on track. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. No, and
We've got to accommodate John.
Gary, or John, before you agree to that, let us show you what he did to us.
Yeah.
They haven't stopped coming back since. I roasted and toasted you in my own backyard with a barbecue.
That's right. We want to talk. We want to focus on that September 21st, 1823 visit, though. This visit in September 21st, 1823 is glossed over here. That they're just saying when it happened, but there is so much important stuff that happened that is related to that September 21st date. First off, we all know that the first vision story wasn't written until 1832, and so it appears really that nobody in the early church knew anything about the first vision. It seems almost like this angelic vision is the first vision. It's the first time we really hear of Joseph meeting with anyone. And we don't know when the first vision was. He just says it's spring of 1820, but he never gives us a date. He can't tell us any specifics about it. But this angel visit is very specific, and he tells us exactly what the date is. Ooh. And then they go back for 5 years. This date becomes important. So why was this date so important, and why does it play into this? And the reason, and Doug's kind of answered it, it's an important date in folk magic. It's an important date probably just about everywhere because it's the fall equinox. It's when the sun is, right at a place that astrology, people who are into astrology, that's an important date. And not only is it the fall equinox, but it's also Jupiter was in retrograde. It had all of these signs that Joseph Smith.
My son's birthday.
It's
your son's birthday.
It's his son's birthday. Well, there you have it. There you have it.
The age of Aquarius.
That's gotta mean something. I'm just saying. It's gotta mean something.
Gotta mean something.
That means the 2/3 seal portion might be coming my way before I pass on into the nether eternities. So keep that at. We might be working together, pal.
There you go. Can you pull up the next slide, Carrie?
Absolutely. Remember, we are being strictly scholarly.
That's right. So this is the angelic visit that happened in September 21st, 1823. You want to go to the next one as well?
Yes. Yep. I should have had that one on last. Here we go.
So this is important, and a lot of this comes out of D. Michael Quinn's a book on Mormonism and the magic
early Mormonism and the magic worldview.
And the magic worldview.
And Dan Vogel has a video on this.
Yes, there's a lot of scholars who hit this.
1,000 views, yeah. But remember, he's not a scholar either, they say.
That's right.
None of us are scholars.
Nope.
It's unfortunate.
But the key thing is, a lot of people don't know, but Joseph Smith and his family was very deeply involved in folk magic. And we know that they had these lamens. They actually had 3 lamens. Jehovah was one. One was called Holiness to the Lord, and the other was called St. Peter or something or other. I can't remember. Something about
and
St.
the other one had a brother named Lemuel.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But this layman is important because basically the layman was developed just probably in September. And the layman lays out when the best time for treasure hunting is and when the treasure angel's the best time to contact the treasure angel. And that just happens to be September 21st, 1823.
Coincidence.
It's kind of every September, but all the lines, everything lined up. So Joseph, when he went in and supposedly was in his room looking, praying or whatever he was doing, waiting for this angel to come, he was looking for a treasure angel all along. This was not a surprise visit. He was expecting an angel to show up to show him where he could find a treasure as part of the treasure digging he'd been doing with his hat and with his seer stone. And he was fully expecting an angel to show up and to help him. In fact, some of the things that I read said that he was actually on a treasure dig on the hill Cumorah the day that this happened. And then he came back at night and was looking for the sign for the treasure angel to help him find a treasure.
Fascinating insight. That I've never had that connection before. Very interesting.
But once you realize he was looking for this isn't something that just happened. But we never hear that in the church, and they just gloss right over this in the essay. And you see here that we know it was the most propitious time for a divine visitation was during a full moon as the autumnal equinox on a day ruled by Jupiter, which was Joseph Smith's ruling planet in astrology, starting at about 11 p.m. And so this is the angel's visits, and the number of times the angels came. He visited him 3 times. That's all folk magic for that. That's how an angel, he's going to visit you throughout the night. And the story lines up perfectly with what a treasure angel would be doing to come and show you where you're going to find a treasure. Oliver Cowdery tells us that Joseph began praying earnestly to commune with some kind of messenger. So this wasn't just someone who came in his house. He was looking for this messenger to come and give him this. And like I said, the messenger,
I would say he was summoning the treasure guardian or the treasure angel. Yeah. And that's very different from praying fervently or hoping or reaching out to God. This is summoning in a folk magic occult way and taking steps to make sure that somebody visited him.
Absolutely. Yep. And the layman had sills on it that basically were supposed to bring jewels and riches. So when you take this in it, that he's got a layman, that he's looking at it, he's working with his family, his whole family's involved in treasure digging. This is the most, the night when all the signs are supposed to come, and he goes to his room and he's supposed to see a treasure angel. And the next day he comes down, and an angel visited me all night, and there's a treasure.
What do you know?
And he told me where to go
We
get it.
no longer have to sacrifice the dog.
The dog. Well, we
That's
still
right.
have to dig it up, I think.
Yeah, that comes later. Did anyone find it ironic that, and I know they make fun of this in Book of Mormon, the musical, the angel said, it's literally in your backyard, Joseph. It's right there. I mean, how convenient, I have to say.
It's right on the hill you've been looking for it.
It's right there.
This is the hill you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the angel you've been waiting for.
That's right.
So, and a treasure angel, what a treasure angel was usually when the traditions in folk magic is when you'd bury a treasure, like a pirate would bury a treasure, they'd then kill one of the crew members and throw it in there with him. And then that crew member's job was to protect the treasure so that people looking for it couldn't find it. But the way you found it was with a seer with a hat and a stone would be looking and finding and telling the crew where to dig and then it always seemed to slip away right at the end, and this is exactly what starts happening to Joseph. Is he knows where this treasure is, but he's not allowed to get to it. And so for the next 5 years, it's almost comic when you start reading the story of what happened over the next 5 years to get to this. And one other thing to add is some of the records when this angel comes on September 21st, 1823, actually call him Nephi, not Moroni. And so we get 2 different names for the angel who showed up.
A mere quibble.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and they attribute that to the problem with the scribe.
Right. They both ended
is what they say.
Okay. It's close enough.
Close enough. Yeah. So some say it's a scribal error.
Yeah. And they're both in the treasure book.
That's right.
But it doesn't really matter, who this angel is. But this story, this night when he comes, seems to go throughout the early Mormon history as the vision. Whenever Brigham Young talks about Joseph, he always talks about the angel that he visited with. It's almost like Brigham Young didn't know anything about the first vision. He seemed to know more about the angel visit than about the first vision. And a lot of people, when you start reading the early Mormon tracts, they talk about an angel visiting. They don't talk about God or anyone else visiting Joseph Smith. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So I want to talk about what happened.
The priest did either.
Exactly.
No. Yeah, that came a lot later. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, everything's retrofitted.
I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people just didn't hear about until it was convenient to elevate Joseph Smith's charisma. Thank you, Dan Vogel, for pointing that out. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. So this visit's in 1823. He gets the plates in 1827. So let's talk about what happened in this time period for him to get the plates. You want to go to the next slide?
You bet.
Okay. First thing we know is in 1823, he goes to find the plates and he's able to find them. But when he goes to touch them, he gets either a shock or there. But when he opens it, there's a toad in there, and this toad comes out and becomes a man and punches him and knocks him back to a tree or something like that. And this is the story as told in one of the witnesses, or one of the people who told the story. I know
this is in the church essay, right?
No, this is not in the church essay. Yes, this is one of the things they leave out, but you can see I kind of highlighted there that he describes something like a toad, which soon assumed the appearance of a man. And so there's this toad in there in 1823 that's preventing him from getting the plates. It won't let him take them until it's time for him to come get him. He's not allowed to take the plates because of the punching toad, which I had never heard this story. Rebecca told me this story. She knew this story when she was a kid. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Where's
no, I often talk about my Orthodox Mormon upbringing, and this is a perfect example. So this is a story that was told to me at family night. You know, to me, to my parents, this was perfectly understandable. I should completely believe this, that a toad jumped out and started punching the prophet. So taught to me in family night. I took it to Sunday school, mentioned it to some of my friends, and my teachers quickly learned that they had never heard of anything like that. And indeed, it was something that you probably shouldn't even talk about. So, but me growing up in my family, that was just normal. Of course, a toad man would jump out, and which explains why I've been female since birth. Because even as a kid, I was like, "This sounds crazy, Mom, Dad, are you okay?" I mean, that was kind of.
My mom and dad told me that was anti-Mormon material.
Yeah.
Stuff.
No.
But I hadn't heard of it. I didn't have that as the anti-Mormon material. It was that funky-looking hat Landon's wearing with that rock. But still, I mean, when these stories are so suppressed, you don't get a chance to really see the whole view. And what else it does is it helps them to control the timeline better so that there's not as many blatant contradictions. So, yeah, interesting.
Well, and it's interesting that this toad plays into the future, because when Mark Hoffman writes his letter, the White Salamander letter, and Mo pointed this out, that it could be it was believable that it could be a salamander, because in folk magic, a salamander was a good spirit, but a toad wasn't. So they were confused as to why it would be a toad and not a salamander. And that's why when this White Salamander letter came out, it was believable.
Yeah, it was too close. And I noticed in the chat that Dan Vogel is putting information about where that account can be found. I think that's what he's talking about.
Willard Chase account, 1834.
Yes.
E.D. Howe, Mormonism Unveiled. Thank you, Dan Vogel. Yeah, that's a very important source. The fascinating thing that utterly fascinated me is back then I was really close with the Farms group of scholars. And when this came out, they came right out. It was a huge study. It was thick of all of the potential parallels with the salamander and the angel Moroni, and why a salamander is believable, like you're saying, Landon and all. And I just didn't believe it. I told my ward, they knew I was a big Book of Mormon freak, and they said, would you mind addressing the priesthood, the whole priesthood, on this White Salamander letter? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll be happy to do that. And I stood up at the pulpit in a special called priesthood meeting so that I could tell them all about this White Salamander. And I said, this is pure malarkey. It's baloney. It's not true. And they actually got very, very upset with me. They wanted it to be true.
Well, it had to be. It had to fit.
Oh,
so
you're taking the Tanner side on this, Brother Schertz. I said, I don't care who said what. I'm telling you, this is hokey. It doesn't match. And yet everyone in the church thought it did. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. And if I remember, correct me, Landon, isn't that what also kind of was a catalyst, if I can say catalyst, for Michael Quinn, his ward members, and people were asking him, what is this? Somebody, a known scholar started to dig into it and find out. So it definitely, I remember when that news came out, I was at BYU and I remember reading about it. And my thought, whenever something like that came out, was just like, I knew it. I was always kind of watching, waiting for things to fall. It was like, I knew it. So I was excited about that news.
Yeah. Mike Quinn's book was a elite game changer.
Yeah.
Right. That just, wow.
Yeah. And he went to the church and said, when are you really going to address this? And they're like, we're working on it. And he's like, well, can I see what you're working on or see your sources? Are like, no. And so he's like, fine, I'll just do my own.
Just so you know, Maven and I are on the same wavelength. That makes me feel real happy.
Yeah. In good company. That's for sure.
That's what I thought, Maven. You're spot on, dear. Yes. So, yeah. So this toad thing, though, it still has shotgun. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, how do we know it's not a Ninja Turtle or something else? It's just as ridiculous. Raphael. It would have to be Raphael because that's one of the archangels. So
that's right. That's right. A religious toad.
So this is the very first year this toad thing happens. So let's go to the next year and see what happens. So this is really an interesting story because in 1823, he's told, come back next year to get the plates at the same time, but you need to bring your brother Alvin with you. And when you bring Alvin, then you'll be able to get the plates. Well, the problem was in December, Alvin died. So Alvin dies. And so the time comes to get the plates and they're going, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to bring Alvin to get the plates, but Alvin's dead. And so this story, and I'd really like to get Dan Vogel's input on this. Rumor starts going around that they've dug up Alvin to bring him to get the plates. And the Smiths are going, no, we didn't do that. And so they
put it in the newspaper.
We have that clip on the slide.
You can actually see on that slide, the newspaper article is there.
It is.
And they actually put an ad in the newspaper that says, no, we didn't dig him up. But we had to dig him up to make sure to prove that he was still there. And so the ground's all been dug up and everything. And you're going, wow. And this happened to be right around the same time period that they were supposed to show up with Alvin to get the plates. You see the date right there in the newspaper, September 20, is that 24th?
25th,
September 25th, 1824. And when you read it, it
right
says,
then.
Whereas reports have been industriously put in circulation that my son Alvin had been removed from the place of his internment and dissected, which reports every person possessed of human sensibility must know are peculiarly calculated to harrow up the mind of a parent and deeply wound the feelings of relations. Therefore, for the purpose of ascertaining the truth of such reports, I, with some of my neighbors this morning, repaired to the grave and removing the earth, found the body which had not been disturbed. So, no, we didn't dig him up. So we went to dig him up to show you that we didn't dig him up.
It's brilliant. Don't you think it's brilliant? Seriously. It's smart. So smart.
So here's the other part of this that just absolutely makes no sense. Okay, let's give God the benefit of the doubt. He's in charge. Why are you going to pick someone that you know is going to die? Who's the logical choice? Emma. Duh! And in fact, she becomes the second choice. But what is this with Alvin thing? This story
actually becomes like the third or fourth choice.
Yeah.
Well,
as usual.
I wasn't sure who it was supposed to be.
Ouch, Rebecca.
Representing.
Actually, Joseph Smith had 32 wives. She was the 33rd choice.
Sealed at 23, I think. Yeah, that was it. Oh dear.
Yeah, so this whole thing just gets weird. So anyone who remembers Weekend at Bernie's where they drag Bernie around, that's kind of how we picture, taking Alvin out to try to get the plates. And whether they really dug him up or not, it's hard to say at this point, but it just seems very suspicious that you put you know, this isn't an obituary. What's the opposite of an obituary, where you, instead of saying we're burying someone, we're digging him up? You know?
Digging them
Yeah,
up.
I've got it. That's called crime.
Try
Oh.
grave robbing.
Grave robbing. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely interesting. Oh, there you go. Dan says it's Joseph Smith's excuse for not getting the plates in 1824 is what he told his family, and they didn't want to give up on the plates. So he basically said, "Oh, well, I was supposed to bring Alvin, but he's dead, so I can't get the plates." You know, so
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
sure what I'm supposed to do. We're going to have to find another person. So who's going to be coming next year to the
Well,
party?
let's just remember now,
Let's
keep the
find
focus here, though, my good friend. Dan Vogel is not a real scholar, according to the apologists in your comments on your most recent Book of Mormon video with Lundwall. So, you know.
That's right.
A dill or a
go to
dollar.
the next one, then see who they invite.
Well, first we have to have a Trexmo.
Trexmo.
First,
yes,
you
I'm gonna
have
let
to.
Rebecca do the Trexmos.
So the first one says, "Hey, Alvin, sorry about this, bro, but I can't even read it. We're gonna have to borrow you for a few days. We'll have you back in the ground in no time." So, that was And the other one kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. "Behold, I am Moroni." No, wait. "Behold, I am Nephi." No, that's not right. Damn it.
Your Trekkies are the best, man. These memes
We're crazy.
Those are fun to make. So let's go to the next one. So in 1825, Joseph decides that there's this other seer that's also looking into seer stones, and Joseph thinks that this man is named Samuel Lawrence. He thinks that he might be the right person for the treasury to bring instead of Alvin. And so he kind of takes him out on a test run, and they go out to the Hill Cumorah, and they're both walking around with their stones in their hats, looking at the ground, and they're comparing stones, you know, and it's like they're trying to outdo each other. And so like Samuel Lawrence is going, "Oh yeah, I see the plates. Oh, do you see something else with them?" And Joseph's going, no, I don't see anything. And Lawrence goes, "Oh yeah, no, there's like these glasses or these spectacles in there." And then Joseph goes, oh yeah, I do see them. And so Joseph realizes now that Samuel is a kind of
he's onto him, isn't he? He's onto him.
Yeah, he's outdoing him with his, you know, it's like he's finding stuff with his seer stone that Joseph can't find with his seer stone. So Joseph decides, Samuel Lawrence isn't the right guy. And so he basically decides that that's not the right person to take. And Samuel Lawrence later was convicted of secreting property, which is basically you take someone's property, you steal it, you hide it, and then you find it in your hat and tell them where it is. And then the people go and find it and they pay you a reward, but you're the one who stole it in the first place to do it. So he was convicted of that. So he wasn't a true seer, but he's the guy who saw the spectacles in the ground. And all of a sudden now, when Joseph opens it up, he's got to find spectacles because they've said that these existed and they've seen them in the hat. So very interesting. That the story getting up to this is just fun to say the least.
Yeah, and none of us heard of this either.
No.
When was the first time we heard of Samuel Lawrence? Was when I was an apologist 4 or 5 years into it. I was off on the Book of Abraham and someone brought this story up. So that's very interesting. I think we were all trying to start doing a Book of Mormon defense series. And man, am I glad I'm not on that side of the fence anymore. Ooh, it would suck to be an apologist with fair. I'm just saying.
You would know.
Lots of gymnastics.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. So 1825, Joseph is going, I don't know who I'm supposed to bring. But he's out digging in Josiah Stoll's place, and he's trying to find a Spanish silver mine in Harmony, again, using his top hat and his stuff. And he boards with Isaac Hill. and meets Lucy Hale through Samuel Lawrence, the guy who was his competitor there looking at the
there you go,
at the stones. And so he signs a treasure digging agreement, Isaac Hale does, with Stoll and the Smiths, and this is how he meets Emma. So let's go to the next slide there. So
I can tell you what's wrong with this picture. The horse is going the wrong direction.
The horse. I don't know that. I'm trying to figure that one out, Carrie. But this is actually one of the most accurate pictures, because come 22nd September 1827, he had to marry Emma, and he had to have Emma because he felt that was the answer of who he had to bring in order to get the plates. So he obviously had to still off with her. He elopes with her. Her father didn't want her to marry him. She felt he was a fraud. He goes off and he gets married to her because he has to have her in order for him to get the plates. And he was told, this is your last chance to get these plates.
And I have to say, Landon, if I can just say, any girl would fall for that line, right?
Who wouldn't?
Come on, baby. Come on, baby. I got to get the plates. You're the only one, and God wants you to do it. I feel like anyone would fall for that.
I would fall for that if a girl told me
Carrie would fall for that.
I have a hill right up by my house, too. I'm telling you, there could be treasures in that. I'm going to start going to look with my seer stone.
There you go. You might find, you don't know what, you'll probably find as much as he did. No,
and I love that picture, because I have to say, like Landon said, you don't hear this story. I taught primary forever. We colored golden plates. I never said, kids, get out your black crayons. You're going to need it. We're going to talk about finding the plates. Yeah. They're all dressed in black, which is why we are tonight. Black horse with its black mane, braided in a special way, black wagon. We never knew that. Yeah, exactly. We never, color with your black crayon, kids. Yeah, we never heard that story.
And the interesting part is that's why we're dressed in black tonight,
right?
In honor of going to get the plates.
Men and women in black.
They had to dress all in black, and they even painted the face black and everything, which is very folk magic. He'd be in trouble today, but very full of folk magic. And when you go back to that picture and you look at that picture, the church, this is probably the most accurate picture, but you still see Joseph has a white shirt. Of course he has to have a white shirt to go get the plates, but they also show him bringing the plates back, and he didn't bring the plates back. He actually put them in a hollow of a log, and then he kept track to make sure they weren't stolen by looking at them in his seer stone. And he'd tell Emma, no, they're still good. They're okay. I can see them in my seer stone. So even when he went to get the plates, he still didn't come back with the plates. So that's
what we see here. Then we see here the church messing around or horsing around with history.
Yeah, exactly. Horsing around with history. But the buggy is another interesting part of the story, because he stole the buggy. The buggy actually belonged to Josiah Stoll, and Josiah Stoll had been on that hill that day digging for treasure, as was Luman Walters days previous. And Luman Walters is very fascinating person. His name was actually Walter the Magician, and he actually was kind of a mentor to Joseph Smith on the art of seer reading and stuff.
Stonery.
They'd actually been,
stoner. Is that what it is?
Stonery. He'd actually been on the hill looking for plates, looking for treasure. That very night, he went to Joseph Smith's home to stay the night there. They were on that hill because, again, it's September 21st, propitious night for digging treasure. They come, and then he goes at 2 a.m. and takes their horse and goes and takes Emma, and they go and get the plates, although they come back with no plates. But that's the story of how they got the plates. So even though they still don't have the plates, they're in the hollow of the log. He goes and gets them several days later, and then remember, he's carrying them back, and he's jumping over the logs, and people are hitting him with rifles, and he finally gets them back and buries them under a stone. So,
it's fascinating, isn't it, that Moroni shocked the living snot out of Joseph Smith when he first tried to get the plates. And then when he finally acquired the plates, he set them down real quick and looked back in and came back and the plates were gone. And Moroni told him, you can't let these plates out of your sight. You have to protect them. And so what's the first thing he does when he gets the plates? He hides them in a hollow log for days and doesn't know where they are. But I can see them in my seer stuff.
Yep. Why not leave them where they were? Why even get them then?
Why even get
them? A couple days later.
I mean, he didn't. I won't get ahead of the story. He didn't use them to translate the Book of Mormon.
No,
don't give that away, Carrie.
And that's
right. So,
yeah. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. So, so this is another interesting story after the translation. This is just kind of a fun side note. But there's a book called the Book of Punctuation. I don't know if I'm saying that right. That's how we've been.
I've always called it
Punctuation, however you want to say it. But
either way, it has the word puke in it.
It's got the word puke, yeah. It's written by Abner Cole, and what was happening? Abner Cole used the pen name Obadiah Dogberry, Esquire, and this is the first satire of the Book of Mormon. And what was happening was, Abner Cole was using the printing office at night that the Book of Mormon was getting printed in to print. He had a paper or something that he was printing at night. And so he'd go in and he'd see the copy of the Book of Mormon. So he got to read it, and he knew Walter the magician. He knew the Smiths. He knew all these people. And so he tells the story. He writes this satire, and it's probably actually the most accurate history of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. It's only 2 chapters long. Look it up on YouTube or Google it and look at and read it. It's really a funny story. He just makes fun of Walter the magician and how they went and got these plates, and it's quite an amusing story to read. Eventually, Hiram comes and threatens him because this is a copyrighted material, and he stops writing. But it's really probably the first and most accurate story of how the Book of Mormon really came about. So it's a fun one to read. So read that if you get a chance. The Book of Punctuation. Very interesting. Okay, now let's get into the real scholarship here. You want to read that, Carrie?
Sure. The angel charged Joseph Smith to translate the book from the ancient language in which it was written. The young man, however, had very little formal education. In other words, he was not a scholar and was incapable of writing a book on his own, let alone translating an ancient book written from an unknown language known in the Book of Mormon as Reformed Egyptian. And there we have it, proof that Reformed Egyptian is real. There you go. Look.
There you have
if
it.
you
right
can
there.
read this, you might be Joseph Smith.
We have no idea what Reformed Egyptian is. It doesn't exist. It never has existed. But what we do have is we do have the Professor Anton characters that Martin Harris supposedly took to Professor Anton, which are supposed to be writings of this Reformed Egyptian. And that's what you see in the lower right-hand corner there is the Anton characters. I'm sorry it's so small, but if you want to look these up.
You can find this, Google it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that not a single one of these characters is in any way Egyptian in nature. What you have up at the top, there were kind of 2 languages in Egypt that were being used. There was the Hieratic and the Demotic. And the Demotic is more like symbols type of language. And the Hieratic has, more kind of like...
Yeah, the Hieratic was a shorthand.
More of a shorthand, yeah. But these were the 2 that were being used at the time that in 600 BC, both of these were actually being used. One would be used more by a priestly caste, and then there was the more common writing. But we put both of those up there so you could compare those to the Reformed Egyptian on the Anton characters, and you see that that none of these characters are Egyptian in any manner. And it always amazes me when you look at the Anton story that he took him to Professor Anton, because they say, oh, well, he confirmed that they were accurate. And then there's that argument over whether they really confirmed them or whether they really were accurate. Well, we don't need to go to Professor Anton right now. We could go to any professor because we've got the characters and say, are these accurate, true and accurate characters? And he said some were Assyriac. It was amazing. He never said any of these are true Reformed Egyptian.
Chaldaic.
Chaldaic, Assyric. It's like, well, I thought they were Reformed Egyptian. What does this matter? But you could take them to any linguist that deals with ancient languages, and none of them are gonna show that they are actual. So
Robert Rittner couldn't translate it either.
The what?
Robert Rittner, he couldn't translate those characters either.
Yeah, exactly.
Egyptian, reformed, deformed, distorted, or however.
John is saying they're not the Anton characters, that we don't have those.
Oh, that's true.
And
this is a copy.
There's copies, and of course there's argument whether is this even real? Is the copy really a real copy? Because again, it's a big hole in the Book of Mormon that these characters are not what we had. Dan there said he thought they were copied out of a book of some kind, but it's interesting that those characters on the shred that we have, if you turn them, you can spell things in English just by turning them.
I've seen one too where they show that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it has the entire English alphabet. And all they've done is they've either flipped it around 180 the other way, or it was sideways and they lifted it this way, or it's upside down to where, I mean, you can easily manipulate letters to make them look foreign. So
John, we'll have to have John. Maybe this is something you can have John talk about. He says they were written by John Whitmer.
I've heard that before.
After Harris showed the characters to Anton, so there is some.
And says Christian Whitmer.
That Christian Whitmer wrote them.
That's what Dan says. So John and Dan are disagreeing. No big deal.
Okay,
Whitmer wrote them.
Again, this is one of the reasons why they say, we can clearly tell what by reading it that much can be gained, and really nothing can be gained because we don't seem to have anything here that really tells us what happened. What does Reformed Egyptian look like? No one has ever heard of Reformed Egyptian, but somehow these people in 600 BC show up in Mesoamerica writing Reformed Egyptian, which John Lundwell in the Mormonish episode clearly shows that there was no alphabet language in any of the Americas. So anyway, this is problematic all the way around when we talk about these characters. So.
But still, I do believe that Dan Peterson might have a good point when he says the horses were translated into tapirs.
Well, I don't think anyone argues that one anymore.
Only explanation.
That one's pretty solidly established now. So one anachronism taken care of. 296 to go.
Yeah, Dan's saying that the Joseph Smith papers say it was John Whitmer, but the Metcalf showed it was probably Christian. So as you can see, even that's up for debate. But these are the characters that are commonly referred to as the Anton characters, saying that they were copied from something at some point.
Yeah,
so,
very good. Okay,
let's go the next part. I'll read that. Joseph's wife Emma this is the essay. We're going back to the essay now. Joseph's wife Emma insisted that at the time of translation, Joseph could neither write nor dictate a coherent and well-worded letter, let alone dictate a book like the Book of Mormon. This is a big thing the church wants you to think, that he's uneducated, that he can't write, that there's no way that he produced a book. The only problem is we actually have a letter from him from at the very same time as the translation's happening. So if you go back, this is the letter right here, and this is copied as best as I could get it. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says, Respected sir, I would inform you that I arrived at home on Sunday morning, the 4th, after having a prosperous journey, and found all well. The people are all friendly to us, except a few who are in opposition to everything, unless it is something that is exactly like themselves. And 2 of our most formidable persecutors are now under censure and are cited to a trial in the church for crimes that, if true, are worse than all the gold book business. 1, we do not rejoice in the affliction of our enemies, but anyway, it keeps going. You can see that he clearly can write a letter. Now, one thing to keep in mind is in this time period, you don't have a lot of dictionaries, so spelling of things can be spelled many different ways. They kind of sounded things out. So even though it
has nothing to do with being uneducated.
Right.
Exactly. And punctuation, lack of punctuation is another issue there, which might make someone say, oh, look, they're not educated, but not true.
That's not, it's like Dan said too in his book, Charisma. I'm telling you, you got to read that book. It is true that Joseph Smith was somewhat undereducated compared to a lot of the people in his area, but he was above everyone in intelligence. He was intelligent, not educated. So that's a very important point Dan Vogel brings up. So yeah, this is interesting. More evidence.
And Rebecca hit this. So, but take a look at that letter. I know it's kind of small there, but what you notice is there's no punctuation. There's no periods. There's no question marks. There's no comment. He doesn't. This is a kind of a common thing in Joseph's writing. Is he doesn't use punctuation.
Interesting. Yeah.
This kind of becomes important a little bit later. So let's move to the next.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Carrie, you want to read that one?
Joseph received the plates in September 1827, and the following spring in Harmony, Pennsylvania, began translating them in earnest with Emma and his friend Martin Harris serving as his main scribes. The resulting English transcription, known as the Book of Lehi and referred to by Joseph Smith as written on 116 pages, was subsequently lost or stolen. As a result, Joseph Smith was rebuked by the Lord and lost the ability to translate for a short time.
So this is important because we all know that he lost the ability to translate, but we also find out that the Lord took back the Urim and Thummim, the breastplates and the spectacles that supposedly he was using to translate. And we never hear that he got them back. So if the Lord takes them, how is he now supposed to translate the book? And so that's where this kind of becomes problematic, is the spectacles are now gone. And it's important. I think there's like 7 people who say they saw the spectacles, but no one had ever seen the spectacles. They were always wrapped in something and they'd fill them.
Exactly.
And when you start reading the descriptions, everyone's describing something completely different. Some are saying, oh, they were, round stones in a like a pair of glasses, and then someone else describes it in a completely different shape, and that they're attached to a breastplate. And so nobody is describing the same thing when they're all saying that they've seen or they're witnessing of this. Again, God took back the breast implants. I like that one.
Well, that will happen in the resurrection.
Yes.
Everybody goes back to what they originally had. Yeah.
Don't worry, ladies. You'll have perfect boobs in the resurrection.
Oh, that's a man's comment right there.
Right.
Man invented heaven.
Do I have to mansplain this? My wife's probably.
That's right. Don't you say edit that out.
So, and the other thing that's important is this next slide right here is, we always hear that, oh, Joseph he did this whole thing in like 3 months, which actually isn't that difficult if you're actually translating. It only would require about 45 minutes a day to translate 500 pages over, over that many months. But Kerry, can you go ahead and read this one?
Yeah. Joseph began translating again in 1829, and almost all of the present Book of Mormon text was translated during a 3-month period between April and June of 1829. His chief scribe during these months was Oliver Cowdery, a school teacher from Vermont who learned about the Book of Mormon while boarding with Joseph's parents in Palmyra. Called by God in a vision, Cowdery traveled to Harmony to meet Joseph Smith and investigate further. Of his experience as scribe, Cowdery wrote, "These were the days never to be forgotten, to sit under the sound of a voice dictated by the inspiration of heaven."
So they say that he wrote, the book was written in just 3 months, and you always hear this as an apologetic argument. There's no way that he could have written it in that short a period of time. Which is, first of all, we know that he got the plates in 1827, and it's June of 1829 when he finishes the translation. So he's actually had almost a year and a half that he's had the plates in his possession that he could have translated them. Now they'll say, well, no, he only the scribe, Oliver Cowdery came and scribed for him only for 3 months, and that's where the Book of Mormon was written. But yes, if you want to believe their story, then I guess that's true. But he, literally had the plates for 2 years that he could have been working on this and working with this story and creating this story, not just 3 months. So in order to be true, you have to say no. If he really had the plates, he's really had them in his possession for almost a year and a half. And the funny thing is that you see there that he completed the translation in June of 1829, but in January to March of 1829, he sends people to Canada to actually try to sell the Book of Mormon copyright in Canada.
Oh,
so
very interesting.
The church now wants to make the argument, no, he was going to try to get a copyright. He wasn't trying to sell the copyright, but he sent 3 people to get the copyright. Does it really take 3 people to get a copyright? And they came back and they were not successful. And it's like, well, how hard is it to get a copyright if you have the book and the things? Why were they not successful? So I don't know if they were trying to sell. They were trying to sell it to someone and say, you get the copyright and then you'll have the copyright here in Canada. And then you sell the books here in Canada. But that before it even went to publication, he was trying to sell the copyright for the book.
Exactly.
I bet he wishes he could sell the gold plates instead.
Yeah, that tells you the intention, I think. I mean, I've even heard in some circles, they say that it was written to be a book that was just sold, much like the Blair Witch Project, right? It has an interesting backstory. Here it is. It was never meant to be a religious text. And that's why so quickly they were trying to sell it. As I said, that's just, supposition. But it is interesting to think about what the true intention was to begin with. And then perhaps realizing, I can do more with this. I can't sell it. Nobody wants it. But this could be a religious text. This could have some value here. You never know.
No one will buy it. Let's give it away. Let's print thousands of copies and have our missionaries.
They can't even do that anymore.
Let's put it in hotel rooms everywhere.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's just interesting that I agree with Rebecca. I think that this was always a book that he just put an interesting backstory to. Why else would you be selling the copyright before you even sent the book out and it's on these gold plates that's been preserved? Why are you selling the copyright? That's never made any sense of why you're out trying to sell a copyright to the Book of Mormon.
And that's a false prophecy.
Just going to say that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to, but
no, we're on the same page, like minds.
Yes, you'll go to Canada, you'll be successful. They came back and they said, what the heck, Joe? And this is where he made his really famous remark that completely undermines his entire life. And Mormons don't recognize this. So I will say it crystal clear. This was the moment when Joseph Smith, who had prophesied in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, Jehovah, that you will sell the copyright from the most correct book on the face of the planet. They didn't. Then Joseph said, well, brethren, some revelations are from just men. Some revelations are from the devil. And some revelations are from God. If Joseph Smith couldn't even tell the difference, why should I believe one blanking thing he ever said, prophecy-wise? Because he didn't know if it was from the devil or from man or from God. How am I going to? By the power of the Holy Ghost? Joseph Smith had Moroni visiting him, Elijah, Jesus and God the Father himself, and he couldn't tell the difference. You see how that wipes it all out. That's fast. And it happened right up front, 1829. So, yeah.
And I think interestingly, he went ahead and followed any prophecy that he got. It's not like he even tried to say discern between them. He just said, I'll do this. Oh, this, I'll do this. It doesn't matter. It was only after the fact when things, did not pan out that then you say, who could have known? So it's a very pivotal moment.
Well, now we just say, oh, well, he was just speaking as a man.
And a lot of the scholars here in the chat are saying, he was trying to sell the copyright to pay off the debt so that he was free from Harris, which is probably true, but it seems that God would certainly be able to provide a better way than selling the copyright to the book that he's preserved for his entire, for 1,000 years buried in his
got Joseph Smith 200 pounds of gold, for crying out loud.
You think he could tell him to go to Massachusetts and go into a basement of a house and find money or something,
Yeah, how did that work out?
Oh, my.
The fun thing about this is you can't make this stuff up. It's just...
Sure you can. Joseph Smith did. Can.
I guess, it gets funnier and funnier as you study. The deeper you dive into it, the more weird it gets. And you're just going, why would they do this? This makes no sense. But that's why Mormonism after you leave is far more fun than when you're in. Because you get to discover these.
It's why you can't leave it alone.
Can't leave it alone. It's too much fun.
Exactly. Are you kidding me? Where will you go? We're going to go to your own history, dudes.
That's perfect.
That's where we're going.
So let's go to the next one there. Go ahead, Carrie, and read that one again.
The manuscript that Joseph Smith dictated Oliver Cowdery and others is known today as the original manuscript, about 28% of which still survives. This manuscript corroborates Joseph Smith's statements that the manuscript was written within a short time frame and that it was dictated from another language. For example, it includes...
Hold it together, Carrie. Hold it together.
It includes errors that suggest the scribe heard words incorrectly rather than misread words copied from another manuscript. Well, I mean, my bosom's burning now, baby.
Yeah, that's kind of a great claim from the church. Yeah, it was evident from the manuscript that he was reading from a dictation and not copying from another manuscript, and that it was clearly from another language that he was, moving this over, which is, I don't know how that works. I don't know how you translate from, evidently he looked in this stone and it changed it into English, and would tell him what sentences, and he would read the sentence that the scribe would write the sentence, and then the scribe would read it back, and then he'd say correct, and then they'd move on and do the next sentence. So with that being the case, we shouldn't be seeing a lot of errors.
We shouldn't be seeing any errors.
Well, you can certainly see a misspelling or something. I could see that, but that's not what we get. And
there's one account. Is it David Whitmer's Address to All Believers, where he says the words would glow and they would not disappear until the scribe got it right. Then Joseph could move on. There should be no errors, man.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one then. And we want to look a little bit about this, because they add this. This is how they say that we know that it was translated from a language other that was not English.
Okay.
And it says, in addition, some grammatical constructions that are more characteristic of Near Eastern languages than English appear in the original manuscript, suggesting that the base language of the translation was not English.
There you have it. What more do you want, Landon Brophy, you skeptic non-scholar?
The church has told us, so it's got to be true. They're referring to Hebraisms, chiasmus, idioms. This is what the church points to and says, oh, this is a word that's very, comes from Hebrew or had its finding, and there's no way Joseph Smith could have known it. Or we all know about chiasmus, where you start and it's a sentence structure like the picture here on the right. It goes to one point and then it goes back to itself. Well, scholars have looked at the book, The Late War, and they've found, many different Hebraisms. Like one of the things that they say is, that it came to pass. The term "it came to pass" is a Hebraism. Well,
Nibley claimed it was an Egyptianism,
and that's the thing. It's not really any of these, but they're
Englishism.
They're grasping at it. But you can see just by looking at if you look at the thing there on the left, the Late War. Here's examples of Hebraisms in the Late War. So was the Late War written in another language than English? No, we know it was written in English, and yet here they are using the same sentence structure. And in fact, when you compare the Late War to the Book of Mormon, there's whole areas where the story sounds very familiar. But several of these terms are what they refer to as Hebraisms and say, oh, no, these are true because they are Hebraisms. But we know scholars have shown that Hebraisms exist everywhere, and also chiasmus exist everywhere.
And can I just say, Dan Vogel brought up in the chat that they exist in the DNC. So
they do,
to me,
definitely.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the right here, you've got on this wonderful slide 21 pair of chiasms in the Late War by Gilbert Hunt, 1816. 21 pair. That's enough to show. All it takes is one. See, this is like the stupid argument of the New Apologetic that there used to be 290 anachronisms. We've got it whittled down, boys. We've only got them down to, now they're like 38 left. Not understanding all you need is one. All you need is one genuine chiasm in an English book, and that destroys the Book of Mormon apologetic.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's
Coco
just a speech pattern. Yeah, Dr. Seuss. I was just going to say that, what she's saying. There, it's all throughout. It's just a speech pattern. It's
how I am. I do not like them here nor there. I do not like them on a tapir.
Oh, tapir. The tapir might be where we get green ham. I don't know.
I feel like it could be.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good slide right there.
But there's a couple other things to keep in mind when we talk about things like chiasmus and idioms. Is a chiasmus in Hebrew which I don't understand why a Hebraism, since it was written in Reformed Egyptian, why a Hebraism would show up anyway, because it wasn't written in Hebrew. It was written in Reformed Egyptian. Chiasmus being that what would be a chiasmus in Hebrew when translated to English is not going to translate to be a chiasmus. And again, as we said in, if you haven't seen the latest episode of Mormonish with Dr. Lundwall, he points out that a chiasmus is a literary device that's far too advanced for any writing system in the Americas that's ever been found. So there is, and we have, if there was a literary society this advanced, we would have found writing from them by this time. So a chiasmus in the Book of Mormon is not a it's actually an anachronism. It shouldn't
it's not
be
a proof.
Yeah,
it should not be there.
Come from any pre-Columbian American writer could not have produced a chiasmus. So it's actually a proof against the Book of Mormon that these type of literary devices are in there. They only could have been written in America in the 19th century when someone
Dan Ogle makes the point of the night right here. I'm even going to post that real quick. Book of Mormon was written in Reformed King James Version.
Yep.
There you
go.
100%. Yeah.
And John Lundwall also mentioned that perhaps when we use the word advanced, maybe a more correct word is to say just different, just too.
Yeah, it's a different. Yeah.
Very different. Yeah.
Watch his episode and you'll be blown away. You'll understand.
We're still trying to understand it. So it's incredible.
Yep. Watch it twice, watch it 3 times. You'll be going, wow. Yeah, I can see this. Why didn't I know this before?
JC says, I have ruined Dr. Seuss. He will never be the same again.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right, we are making progress. And
I want to get through this thing.
We're making some exquisitely interesting points here. This is fascinating. You want me to read this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's big.
Maybe Rebecca could even read that one.
But you know what? I can read this one. Let me try once. My screen is so small. That's the issue. It couldn't possibly be my aging eyesight. No. Okay. Unlike most dictated drafts, the original manuscript was considered by Joseph Smith to be, in substance, a final product. That's very interesting.
How do we know that?
This is a copy of you can't really read it because remember they took the original and they put it in the temple, the cornerstone of the temple. So only a small portion of it remains, or 28% or something like that. But we know. Let's just go to the next one, then we'll talk a little bit more about the thing there. Carrie, can you read that one?
To assist in the publication of the book, Oliver Cowdery made a handwritten copy of the original manuscript. So this handwritten copy is known today as the printer's manuscript because Joseph Smith did not call for punctuation. In other words, no periods, commas, or question marks as he dictated. Such marks are not in the original manuscript. The typesetter later inserted punctuation marks when he prepared the text for the printer, with the exceptions of punctuation, formatting, other elements of typesetting, and minor adjustments required to correct copying and scribal errors. The dictation copy became the text of the first printed edition of the Book of Mormon.
So this is actually kind of interesting. When Rebecca and I work on these slides, often she'll read something as I'm typing the slide or something like that. And when she reads it, she would say, like, pull up the slide again. And, if she would say, to assist in the publication, and I'm typing, of the book, comma, Oliver Cowdery made a handwritten copy of the original manuscript, period. Because I'm typing it and I need to know where the punctuation goes.
Sure.
But in the original, when Joseph is looking at it in the stone and he's making sure that it's correct, he never reads any punctuation. Supposedly he's seen it on a rock and he's reading it, but he's not saying comma. He's not saying period. He's not saying question mark. He's not putting any punctuation in it. But remember that letter that Joseph Smith couldn't write? There's no punctuation in it. So Joseph dictated the same way he wrote, with no punctuation. You would think that if God is, showing him on a rock and telling him that God could make sure there was punctuation in there.
Well, apologists might say God doesn't use punctuation. We all know that. He's the king of the run-on sentence.
That's right. God's major in college was not English. Let's get that right.
That's right. That's right.
But no, that is very interesting. It really is, because there is no punctuation in the letter and there is no punctuation on the manuscript.
On the original manuscript.
On the original manuscript.
E.B. Grandin complained because he said, this is horrible. Even the printer's manuscript, he was going, it's completely, all the punctuation's wrong. He started making them bring them in several days early because they were only bringing him in the ones that were supposed to be printed that night. And he started saying, no, you got to give them to me earlier because I got to have time to fix this. This is
a hot mess.
English. And so he'd have to sit and fix them before he could set the typeset so that they could actually print the book, because the English was horrible, the punctuation wasn't there, and he had to fix all of that. So
well, and Dan Vogel made a very good point. Of course, it's oral performance.
Yep.
If you're reciting, if you're giving a performance, if you're telling a mythological story, you're not going to stop and say, period. You're telling it. You're reciting it.
Right. I'll bet the printer was dang grateful 2/3 of those books were sealed.
That's for sure. The other thing is, what if he'd written it down before and he was actually reading? He had copies in his hat or something he was reading. You know, if he'd have written it himself, he would have written it with no punctuation.
With no punctuation.
Just like he wrote. Yeah. So
would have.
That's just something that makes you think, that's interesting. So anyway, that's something to come up. So this is Rebecca's favorite part, the translation instruments. Carrie, go ahead and read that one. Then Rebecca will talk a little bit about the Urim and Thummim.
Okay, translation instruments. Many accounts in the Bible show that God transmitted revelations to his prophets in a variety of ways. Elijah learned that God spoke not to him through the wind or fire or earthquake, but through a still small voice. Paul and other early Christian apostles sometimes communicated with angels and, on occasion, with the Lord Jesus Christ. At other times, revelation came in the form of dreams or visions, such as the revelation to Peter to preach the gospel to the Gentiles, or through sacred objects like the Urim and Thummim. Okay, Rebecca, take it away.
The Urim and Thummim, very interesting to me. When we did our book club episode on early Mormonism and the magic worldview, we studied a lot about that. And the church tells you it's a sacred stone. It's a very religious object. That's not exactly how it was used. And I'm so mad I can't find it, but I made my husband dress up as a priest with an ephod with the Urim and Thummim for Halloween. And I cannot find the dang costume, but it was hilarious. So basically you would have these two rocks, the Urim and Thummim, but they were more like dye, more like in Vegas, So if you can see there, you would put on this special apron. It would have pouches at the top on the shoulders, and the rocks would go in the pouches. So then when a king or someone had a question, they would call the priest in. The priest would take the rocks off of the pouches on the shoulder, put them in the pocket of the apron, kind of fumble them all around, like rolling the die. And then it's like casting lots, right? Reading tea leaves, the same kind of concept. It was, looking at runes or rolling a dice. And then they would tell you, oh, it's a good day to go to war. So that's really what they were. But I feel like looking for some kind of biblical tie-in, something to give it authenticity. They just said, oh, those are rocks. Those are rocks. Yes, the Urim and Thummim. And that may be very simplistic, but it was interesting to learn how they were used. They were literally like casting lots, trying to decide what the future is. What's your fortune? Should we go to war? Should we do this? Very interesting.
Yeah, you could only ask yes or no questions to it.
Yeah.
It was like the magic, you shake it and it gives you a yes or no or whatever. You couldn't translate.
It was not a translator.
Yeah,
no,
you couldn't do anything.
Not a
like
translator.
with it.
Hold on. Now I might have the solution then, because I don't have a Urim and Thummim. I have a Thummim and a Thummim. That could help. I'm just saying.
Yes or no, Urim and Thummim. Yeah.
What happens if you get a mixed signal?
Then.
Yeah, someone Don said magic 8-ball, exactly like a magic 8-ball. Can you imagine if that?
So these magic, and it's funny, whenever something sounds made up, the church tries to go to Old Testament scripture or somewhere to prove
authenticity.
Look, Peter talked to angels. Peter saw a vision. Why is it strange that Joseph Smith looked at a rock in his hat that he'd used to dig gold plates 2 years before? It's like, that's not even, number one, that's not even a comparison, but to just say, well, because it's weird in the Old Testament, it's okay that it's weird in the Book of Mormon. This is how God works. He just uses weird things. Okay, well, I don't believe the Bible ones either. Then they're just as weird. That doesn't make it so. That's not a proof that it happened. But the Urim and Thummim that they describe, these spectacles in a breastplate have nothing to do with the Urim and Thummim we read about in the Bible. How did they get there? Where did they come from? Some people say it's the rocks that the brother of Jared changed in. And so the Urim and Thummim is used very loosely. It's like they started calling everything the Urim and Thummim. They started calling the rock a Urim and Thummim. The seer stone was a Urim and Thummim. Anything that they used to translate was called a Urim and Thummim to make it sound Old Testament.
I have the Urim and Thummim right here.
That would be if you used it, you could call it that.
Not a Urim and a Hiram right here.
Urim and Thummim. Joseph Smith used Urim and Thummim to distract from folk magic. Yeah, he wanted to make it sound like it wasn't real, that it was
biblical. Yeah,
biblical.
He did. Yep.
Instead of this. And you see that the church thought it was so ridiculous that they hid the story for years until it finally resurfaced that no, he was using a rock.
They excommunicated people for claiming he translated with the rock in a hat.
Yep.
Instead of the Urim and Thummim.
Because it's folk magic. And the church knew that people had moved beyond folk magic and would not accept it as a true translation with folk magic. So let's go to the next one.
We've technically speaking, I need to find a plastic pop bottle I can crush tonight to prove I'm following the but
I'm glad you ended that sentence by saying crush. I wasn't sure what you were meaning.
I do have my own Urim and Thummim. Our phones.
There it is.
The Lord works in mysterious ways. Mine keeps coming up with chess. Can you believe it?
It's so ironic. Well, I think it's an interesting point. When we read Michael Quinn's book, he said everything started out folk magic, right? And that was kind of fine with the general populace. Joseph was cool for doing that, digging treasure. Suddenly things started to shift a little bit, right? The unchurched became church. And then it wasn't so cool to say it was a treasure guardian, but it was really cool to say angel. Yeah, it's an angel. No, these isn't my seer stone. It's Urim and Thummim. I mean, again, that's a little simplistic, but I feel like he kind of followed the trend. All of a sudden, religion was in, folk magic, the occult out.
Interesting. Yeah, good observation, Rebecca. Yeah. That's just fascinating.
And Dan brings up another point. He said the breastplate was associated with the sword of Laban, not in the D&C, and then not the Urim and Thummim. That's one of the things you see is sometimes the Urim and Thummim's by itself, the spectacles, and other times it's supposed to be attached to a breastplate. So it's like, where did this breastplate come from? Where did all that happen? How did this get weaved into the story? It just doesn't make sense. Again, more problems that just you sit and go, well, this makes this story is being made up as it goes. Everyone sees something and they got to take all these pieces that someone said they were told and try to make them work, and they just don't work together.
Yeah, he was just making it up on the fly.
Yeah. And people would believe it, and then they'd tell their story, and now you had to incorporate it into the story somehow.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move on.
All right. Doctrine? What doctrine?
Okay, I'll read this one. Joseph Smith, this is from the essay again. Joseph Smith stands out among God's prophets because he was called to render into his own language an entire volume of scripture amounting to more than 500 printed pages, containing doctrine that would deepen and expand the theological understanding of millions of people for this monumental task. God prepared additional practical help in the form of physical instruments.
There you have it. What's the question about that?
Yeah, he deepened the understanding, the doctrinal understanding. But then the question comes up, what's in the Book of Mormon that changes the doctrinal that we didn't have in the Bible?
Kolob, you idiots. Kolob.
Where's Kolob?
This drives me nuts. Doctrine, what doctrine? I have this discussion with lots of people, which is why I appreciate our next slide. It's not what's in the Book of Mormon. What isn't in the Book of Mormon? Oh. It's just astounding to me.
Yeah, pull that up, Carrie, and if you want to go.
Now she's whetting our appetites. There we go.
The most correct book that gives us the cornerstone of our religion. And yet, if you look at these lists, these things are not mentioned in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, no, there's no priesthood. There's no eternal marriage. There's no temple ordinances. There's no tithing. There's no mention of preexistence. There's no mention of word of wisdom. There's no mention of eternal progression. No mention of baptism for the dead. no mention of the laying on of hands, no mention of the sealing power, no mention of anointings, no mention of garments. And the nature of the Godhead is Trinitarian in the Book of Mormon. It does not clearly define what that is. So when the missionaries are out there saying, you know, this book contains the fullness of the gospel, all that stuff's in the D&C and the Pearl of Great Price. It's not the Pearl of Great Price and the Doctrine and Covenants is the keystone of our religion. It's the one that has all the truly unique Mormon doctrines, not the Book of Mormon.
And there's no tapirs.
There's no tapirs. There's no corn either, which corn should be in the Book of Mormon too. Well,
in fact, interestingly, Landon, I think we read, if you were to create a religion from what is in the Book of Mormon, only in the Book of Mormon, it would just be kind of your mid-level Protestant religion.
Oh, that's
nothing really unique.
There was nothing in there that Protestant religion of Joseph Smith's time wasn't already doing at the time. So, no mention of cleaning the Lord's toilet. Yeah, when did that become doctrine?
Skeptic. On Sunday, no less, when you're supposed to be resting from labor.
So it's just interesting that we hold that up, and I see all these missionaries out there, and you know, God bless them. They're out there giving their testimony, saying, you know, the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ can be found in this book. And in reality, none of those things are in the book. It just didn't happen.
And we're told we have to crawl over it, around it, under it, sideways. I mean, it is held up as the most important thing, but it does not contain the fullness of that gospel.
That sounds like something stupid Elder Holland would say. Oh, wait.
All right, let's go to the next one.
You want me to read this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yes.
So we have a picture of the gold plates up on the top left and a seer stone. Oh, no, those are spectacles on the gold plates. Yeah, there's a pair of glasses there, kind of. So Joseph Smith and his scribes wrote of two instruments used in translating the Book of Mormon. According to witnesses of the translation, when Joseph Smith looked into the instruments, the words of Scripture appeared in English. One instrument, called in the Book of Mormon the Interpreters, is better known to Latter-day Saints today as the Urim and Thummim. Joseph found the Interpreters buried in the hill with the plates. Those who saw the Interpreters described them as a clear pair of stones bound together with a metal rim. The Book of Mormon referred to this instrument, together with its breastplate, as a device kept and preserved by the hand of the Lord and handed down from generation to generation for the purpose of interpreting languages.
Let's stop right there for just
I was going to say, wait a minute. Nothing's been handed down. It was hidden in a hill.
It was hidden in a hill, and then it was taken away from him as soon as he did the first 116 pages and was never given back. So it was saved for generations of time to translate 116 pages that are lost, and then it was taken back and never used again.
Landon, that's pretty skeptical.
That's very spectacle. It's
very spectacle.
It's a skeptical. That is fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. The other instrument, which Joseph Smith discovered in the ground years before he retrieved the gold plates, was a small oval stone or seer stone. As a young man during the 1820s, Joseph Smith, like others in his day, used the seer stone to look for lost objects and buried treasure. As Joseph grew to understand his prophetic calling, he learned that he could use this stone for the higher purpose of translating Scripture and inventing doctrine. Oh, wait, that's not what it says.
Well, there's those weasel words we always talk about.
Yeah.
Joseph, like others in his day, to make it like, well, other people were using seer stones to find lost objects and buried treasure. Why is it so strange that Joseph was?
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're trying to normalize him, aren't they?
Yeah, they're trying to make it sound like it's perfectly normal. And
well, others were using them, but the others were also seen as kind of, the fringy charlatan. They were the ones that were,
and they weren't
all of them except Joseph Smith, of course, because he was guided by the salamander named Moroni Nephi.
That's right. That's right. He had a special power that none of the others had to see.
That's a double angel whammy. I'll take a double angel whammy. Yep.
So Joseph basically takes this stone, this seer stone that he used to find treasure, to look for folk magic. He puts it in a hat, and this is now, because the Urim and Thummim, what they call it, has been taken back. He's got no other option now but to look in his hat. He doesn't use the plates. He doesn't use, like we see in all the pictures. He puts his face in a hat and looks at a stone which English words appear on. When did you even learn about this?
I was 1 years old in primary.
Most of us learned about it on South Park. Remember the South Park episode where we're going, that's not right. What are they talking about?
This is just anti-Mormonism.
This is just anti-Mormonism. That you're going, what? Hat and a rock? And we actually wanted to show that, but we'd gotten a...
we don't want a copyright strike.
Remember when we sang the Book of Mormon musical a couple times ago? We got a copyright.
We got shut down. Well, I think they struck us just for our voices, but they said it was a copyright strike. Anyway, it was taken down regardless. So
yeah, that happened.
Decided we maybe shouldn't use the actual one because it's copyrighted.
But I will say, if you have not seen, I don't know who in the universe hasn't, but if you haven't watched the South Park episode, Dum 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 Dum, please just go Google it. It's hilarious.
It's
and it's the truth.
That got to more people in the world than anything Mormon missionaries have ever done from Joseph Smith's day on to right now.
Yeah. Why is it the first time we hear about this is on a cartoon show?
Yeah.
On TV?
Because God's got a sense of humor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I mean, everyone knew that the church knew this. In fact, it was clear up into the 1900s before they started changing the narrative and changed it away from that when people started going away from folk magic. But then when it came back, there was so much evidence they had to acknowledge that this is in fact how he translated. But now there's a bunch of scholars trying to argue that he didn't, because obviously folk magic and reading a rock in a hat that you use to defraud people, to fraud people, it is clearly, problematic to say the least. And the church knows it. It's just absurd. So
can't argue with that. Okay. This one too, or you got it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be happy to. Let's see. Hold on. I've got to get my Urim and Thummim. Apparently, for convenience, Joseph often translated with the single seer stone rather than the two stones bound together to form the interpreters.
Stop right there. So God saved these all the way through the plates. He saved these breastplates. He served the spectacles, but they weren't real convenient. So he just used the rock in the hat instead.
Yeah. After all that. After all that.
Generation after generation. But it's
a great sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds biblically magnificent, and that's part of the brainwash, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's very interesting. These two instruments, the interpreters and the seer stone, here we go, were apparently interchangeable and worked in much the same way, such that in the course of time, Joseph Smith and his associates often used the term Urim and Thummim to refer to the single stone as well as the interpreters. In ancient times, here we go, in ancient times, Israelite priests used the Urim and Thummim to assist in receiving divine communications. Although commentators differ on the nature of the instrument, several ancient sources state that the instrument involved stones that lit up or were divinely illuminated or illumined. Latter-day Saints later understood the term Urim and Thummim to refer exclusively to the interpreters. Joseph Smith and others, however, seem to have understood the term more as a descriptive category of instruments for obtaining divine revelations and less as the name of a specific instrument. Some people have balked at this claim of physical instruments used in the divine translation process. but such aids to facilitate the communication of God's power and inspiration are consistent with accounts in Scripture, if you count the Pearl of Great Price. In addition to the Urim and Thummim, the Bible, the Bible mentions other physical instruments used to access God's power: the rod of Aaron, a brass serpent, holy anointing oils, the Ark of the Covenant, and even dirt from the ground mixed with saliva to heal the eyes of a blind man.
They left out the sorting hat that Harry Potter uses and other divine instruments that we read about.
Crystal ball.
Crystal
There
ball,
it is.
all
Crystal
those divine
ball.
instruments. The Ouija board.
Yep.
I
And
think
the
iPhone did the Ouija board thing. So yeah, well, just because everyone else used these crazy instruments, it's okay that he used a rock and a hat. And it's, boy, the wording that they use there is just
very clever, actually. Yeah,
it
fooled us for a few decades, right?
Absolutely. The Urim and Thummim it was used to describe instruments that were.
Right. It's a category.
It's a category, but it's
a category.
Urim and Thummim. It's two things, which.
No, say it together. Bible, Urim and Thummim.
They were two stones, Urim and Thummim. How did it now become Urim, Thummim, breastplate, stone, whatever you want to make it, is now a Urim and Thummim?
Well, and I'd like to bring up, so I just have to laugh because having raised my kid in the Harry Potter era in the heart of Utah County, there were so many other parents that would never let their children watch Harry Potter because of the occult, because of any of that, and this was years ago, decades ago. And now it's actually floors me. Landon and I and some others were at the Church History Museum a month ago, and we were talking to a nice guide there, and she was just laughing and smiling and telling us about the hat and the secret magic stone. And it was just the world of bizarro to me to think that, and this woman was a little older than we were, that she somehow, because her church told it was okay, could wrap her brain around that and talk about it so nonchalantly, when I guarantee you probably 20 years before that would have horrified her. She probably knew nothing about it, but now as a guide for the museum, she was very happy to share what was perfectly normal for her: a stone, a magic stone, and words and a hat. And it was actually really disturbing. Didn't you find, Landon? It was very disturbing.
I found it disturbing. You had
he got in a fight with her. We won't go into that. Yeah, we had to physically restrain him.
Come on.
It's a little ranty.
That makes this episode more interesting. You can't.
All right. So this nice woman that we were talking to, she started talking about the golden plates and how much they weighed. And Landon was saying, well, wouldn't these be much heavier? He was trying to ask some leading questions. And she's like, oh, no, they're an alloy. And Landon's like, I wasn't aware that there was the capability to make metal alloy in that area. And she goes, oh, the Nephites and the Lamanites were great metalsmiths. They had all kinds of artifacts, all kinds of alloy. And Landon's like, where's that? And I could see his eyes kind of getting a little more. And she goes, oh, in the east of the United States, there are museums everywhere with alloy, metal, Lamanite, Nephite artifacts. And then Landon, stone cold, goes, no, there aren't. And then I had to go get help with the rest of our party. I go, Landon's about to lose it. Come help him, because he had just had too much. You just couldn't take it anymore. Literally, you could not take it. It was interesting.
My new hero in the top hat right there, folks. Take a look. Landon Brophy, the man. Damn right.
Yeah, we got him out of there. We de-escalated and we got him out of there. So
this metal alloy that took gold from weighing 500 pounds to, they should use that in fighter jets now. An alloy that could lighten gold that much. But anyway.
And all those artifacts that are everywhere. You can just go to museums and see them. They're everywhere.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Rebecca.
Okay, let's go to
the Brophy effect, says Doug Vincent. That's hilarious.
Let's go to the next slide.
All right.
Rebecca,
I can't even read my own meme that I made up. So someone has to read it from God.
All right, here we go. The stone in the hat then block the light. Geez, it seems pretty self-explanatory. Come on, Perk.
Yeah, everyone knows that you put the hat in the stone and then look at it. That's how you get interpretations. anyone should know this.
Can't believe Captain Kirk messed that up. No wonder the Klingons blew his ship up, man. I'm just saying.
All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, let's talk about the sorcerer and the stone. Interestingly enough, Joseph Smith did not have one seer stone. He had 5. He acquired the first one, which was
that means Brigham Young had 36 or 37, right?
That's wives.
He
That's
was always
wives.
ahead of Joseph.
Oh, that's right.
Always
Brigham
ahead.
Young had to outdo him and everything. So,
but he had 5. He acquired a white one. He had a green one that he acquired in 8. So he's acquiring these before he's ever had the first vision. The brown one, which is the one that's most associated with this, he found in 1822. So this supposedly 2 years after he'd already had a first vision. He actually found it while digging a well on Willard Chase's property, and he asked Willard Chase if he could borrow it, and then he refused to give it back. So it's basically a stolen article.
Stolen stone.
The Seer stone. And once Willard Chase thought it actually had power, he wanted it back. Oh, wow, I want that stone. But everybody had a seer stone. Joseph had a seer stone. Lucy had a seer stone. W.W. Phelps, Sally Chase, Luman Walters, Hiram Page. It's like Oprah. You get a stone. You get a stone. Everybody gets a seer stone. That's these were just laying around everywhere. So evidently, all these sacred implements that they're talking about in the letter, you just can find anywhere, and anyone can have one. And you have a seer stone, and you can interpret. You can read things. Clearly.
Well, I feel gypped.
I know. You can have a seer stone too. In fact, Joseph Smith said every man should have their own seer stone. So
Not you, Rebecca. Patriarchy.
No, I have one. I have one. I'm the matriarchy, and I have one. And you know what it's telling me about you, Carrie? I don't know.
Hold on, we've got to take a commercial break now, folks.
I think it's saying Carrie is stoned. Yeah.
Possibly. We don't know. We don't know.
So yeah, seer stones were very common, and so these common implements are what we're using rather than the sacred instruments.
And they weren't just for Mormons.
No, they were for the
priesthood power of God is not just for Mormons. That's a new doctrine.
Well, that's certainly true at this point. Okay, you want to go to the next one? I'm just trying to look at the time here to make sure we.
We're doing fine. We have to beat your old record of 2 hours and 99 minutes.
No. We don't need to beat that. Carrie, is your eyes good enough to read that?
That is.
Oh, sure.
Get your magnifying glass out, Carrie.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to get my seer stone out. Mine's a magnifying stone. The mechanics of translation. In the preface to the 1830 edition of the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith wrote, "I would inform you that I translated the book by the gift and power of God. When pressed for specifics about the process of translation, Joseph repeated on several occasions that it had been done by the gift and power of God, and once added, it was not intended to tell the world all the particulars of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. Nevertheless, the scribes and others who observed the translation left numerous accounts that give insight into the process. Some accounts indicate that Joseph studied the characters on the plates. Most of the accounts speak of Joseph's use of the Urim and Thummim, either the interpreters or the seer stone, and many accounts refer to his use of a single stone. According to these accounts, Joseph placed either the interpreters or the seer stone in a hat, pressed his face into the hat to block out extraneous light, and read aloud the English words that appeared on the instrument. The process described brings to mind a passage from the Book of Mormon that speaks of God preparing a stone which shall shine forth in darkness unto light."
Did anyone think about this Book of Mormon scripture when they heard about that?
Absolutely. I did it all the time when I became a deacon.
Yeah, you used to look at the stone in that. Oh yes, I remember the glowing stones in the hat interpretation in the Book of Mormon, which of course is written about itself. So he's describing the very process that
I was
he's
just
doing.
going to say that. It's easy to write that in. There will be a prophet arisen, Joseph. Oh, how ironic.
Yeah, with a stone that glows. Of course, the person who believes in glowing stones is going to write about a glowing stone in his book.
That's interesting. That guy has my name, and he's got a rock like I do.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that we still have the seer stone? We have the brown seer stone. The church, I don't. The church does. I borrowed this from the church. No,
you stole it just like Joseph Smith
stole it, just like Joseph. But the church has the seer stone in their possession. The church, or someone probably had the hat in the possession. How come God didn't take the hat and the seer stone back? But he took the breastplate, the sword of Laban, the Book of Mormon, the Liahona, all the other artifacts had to go back. But the artifacts that were contemporary to the day were just fine to be left alone, even though they were the primary tool that was used. This is the power that was used to translate. It didn't have to go back to God, but the other that could have clearly proven a Book of Mormon or a divine origin, they all went back.
Well, I can answer that question. I can answer that question because I have family members who believe that those things that you just mentioned are in a vault in the church office building being guarded by 2 Lamanite warriors. They're completely, no, don't laugh. They're serious. And I have conversations with them and I go, that's what they think. They were not taken back. They're simply being guarded for a time when they're going to be needed again.
That's why we stopped seeing stories about the 3 Nephites, because 2 of them were in the vault guarding the
2 of them are in the freaking vault. They don't have time to change your tire. One can't do it. Exactly.
Again, more the gymnastics, how you can know these things and not go, what?
The hell, finish
what
the
is going on? Yeah. Okay, let's go to so I'll read this. The scribes who assisted with the translation unquestionably believed that Joseph translated by divine power. Joseph's wife Emma explained that she frequently wrote day after day at a small table in their house in Harmony, Pennsylvania. She described Joseph sitting with his face buried in his hat, with the stone in it, and dictating hour after hour with nothing between us. According to Emma, the plates often lay on the table without any attempt at concealment, wrapped in a small linen tablecloth. If they were wrapped in a small linen tablecloth, wouldn't that be an attempt to conceal the plate?
That's the definition of a concealment.
There is no way. There is just no way. I don't care what book you quote to me. There is no way Emma would not have peeked unless she was in on it.
Yeah. Yes. How do you sit there day after day, and when he walks out to go the outhouse, you don't go,
there is no way.
Well, there was a threat, though. There was a threat that you would die. Am I correct in that there was a threat that you would die if you peeked in? Carrie's forget the threat.
Something along that.
Well, Emma was always being threatened with destruction. Think about that. So she was used to
by the end of her life. I mean, by the end of her life, think about this. By the end of her life, Emma Smith believed so much in what Joseph Smith had been doing that she sold a papyri that Abraham himself had signed.
Yep.
She sold it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that tells you, yeah. Go the next thing. I think she said,
she basically said enough of this, Huey.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Go ahead and read that one.
When asked if Joseph had dictated from the Bible or from a manuscript he had prepared earlier, Emma flatly denied those possibilities. He had neither manuscript nor book to read from. Emma told her son, Joseph Smith III, the Book of Mormon is of divine authenticity. I have not the slightest doubt of it. I am satisfied that no man could have dictated the writings of the manuscripts unless he was inspired. For when acting as his scribe, your father would dictate to me for hour after hour, and when returning after meals or after interruptions, he would at once begin where he had left off without either seeing the manuscript or having any portion of it read to him.
We all know that the quotations from the Bible in the Book of Mormon come from the King James Version of the Bible, which wasn't translated for 1,500 years after, almost 2,000 years after they left Jerusalem. So how are errors in the King James Bible translation moved over into the Book of Mormon, especially if it's the most correct book? Why wouldn't he just have gotten the correct interpretation and interpreted it correctly? That's the question, and I think we've all heard that question come up before. Why did that happen, or how did that come in?
I have the answer.
All right.
These are inspired mistakes, inspired errors. God
who says they're mistakes? Who says they're mistakes? That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
King James Bible got it right. It was wrong in the original, right? King James made the correction, and that's how he saw it. So that's so it's funny when you read the apologetics on it, they start saying, well, it's clear that when he started reading into that, he said, oh, this is already in the King James Bible. Everyone is already familiar with this passage. And so he went and wrote it. But she just said he didn't copy any of it from the Bible. Yeah. So you can't have it both ways. You can't put in the essay that he didn't copy from the Bible, and then in your apologetics say, oh, he recognized that from the Bible, so he just copied it from the Bible, and that's how it got in there.
Besides, that's not translating an ancient text. There's no way the King James was ancient. That's the issue. Yeah.
Oh, well, absolutely. And there's no reason if you've got a stone there telling you that you would say, oh, that's the King James Version. I'm going to take my stone, put it away, and go get the King James Bible, when I can just look at my stone and it'll read it right off to me. And they'd even said in there that there was no copying from manuscript to manuscript. It was clear from the original publisher. And yet the apologetic answer is he copied it from the Bible. So there was copying from manuscript to manuscript. If you can't have both arguments, you have to take, you have to stick with one of your arguments.
You maintain faith in the holy covenant path. You can have it both ways.
Okay.
So Russell Nelson.
Let's go to the next one. I think we're getting close.
Here we go.
This is our favorite one. This is how the words would appear. They just appear on the rock, and he'd read them. Of course, there was no punctuation, evidently.
There is on that Seer stone.
There is on that one. And, of course, Joseph Smith, Ovaltine, a crummy commercial, son of a bitch. So, obviously from Christmas Story, this comes from. So, Carrie, you want to read that one?
Another scribe, Martin Harris, sat across the table from Joseph Smith and wrote down the words Joseph dictated. Harris later related that as Joseph used the seer stone to translate, sentences appeared. Joseph read those sentences aloud, and after penning the words, Harris would say, written. An associate who interviewed Harris recorded him saying that Joseph possessed a seer stone by which he was enabled to translate, as well as from the Urim and Thummim, and for convenience, he then used the seer stone. And God, of course, wasn't against that, because he preserved the Urim and Thummim for generation after generation after generation after generation. And he knew he was going to take him back anyway. So forget all that noise, Joe. Just use the rock.
If anything, God is a God of convenience.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
He never requires anything, too difficult. Whatever's easiest, just do that.
Fascinating.
Yes, and Martin Harris, the Deer Whisperer, we all know he had crazy ideas as well.
Oh, yeah.
So the principal scribe, Oliver Cowdery, testified under oath in 1831 that Joseph Smith found with the plates from which he translated his book true transparent stones resembling glass set in silver bows, that by looking through these, he was able to read in English the Reformed Egyptian characters which were engraven on the plates. If the stones were taken away, if the interpreters were taken away when Martin Harris lost them and they were never returned, I'm not sure how Oliver Cowdery saw these, but that's maybe something to dig into, because I'm not sure. Oliver Cowdery came after Martin Harris, and after the lost 116 pages. In the fall of 1830, Cowdery visited Union Village, Ohio, and spoke about the translation of the Book of Mormon. Soon thereafter, a village resident reported that the translation was accomplished by means of 2 transparent stones in the form of spectacles through which the translator looked on the engraving. However, again, when Oliver Cowdery was doing this, he was supposedly pretty much using the stone in the hat, didn't have the spectacles, so the spectacles just become a problem all over the place. The timelines don't seem to match. Did he give them back? Who saw him? When did they see him? How did he get them back? Why are they look different? Some say you could take the stones out of the rims and put them in his hat, and he'd look at them in those in his hat as opposed to his other seer stone. The stories are all over the place.
And any way you slice it, it just looks steampunk. Have you seen those pictures?
Yeah, that is steampunk. I think that's what Dr. Lundwall was asking for. Some steampunk goggles, which I will do for him.
Yep.
Well, let's see the next one. Oh, wow. You want me to read this one?
You can read them, yes. You have a fresh voice.
What the F is a Moroni? And how the hell did it get on my bridge? Number 1? Oh, my. Which is the Urim and which is the Thummim? Hell if I know, he says.
Nor does anyone else in the church seem to know.
Okay, here's what we can do. We can say one trans, the other lates.
There you go.
Translates. That's it.
Okay, let's go to the next. I think we're
So we're at the conclusion. Awesome.
This is the conclusion of what the Gospel Topics essay says on this. It says Joseph Smith consistently testified that he translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. His scribes shared that testimony. The angel who brought news of an ancient record on metal plates buried in a hillside and the divine instruments prepared especially for Joseph Smith to translate were all part of what Joseph and his scribes viewed as the miracle of translation, and it certainly was. When he sat down in 1832 to write his own history for the first time, he began by promising to include an account of his marvelous experience. The translation of the Book of Mormon was truly marvelous. The truth of the Book of Mormon and its divine source can be known today. God invites each of us to read the book, remember the mercies of the Lord, and ponder them in our hearts, and ask God, the eternal Father, in the name of Christ, if these things are not true. God promises that if ye shall ask with a sincere heart, with real intent, having faith in Christ, he will manifest the truth of it unto you by the power of the Holy Ghost. So we go right back to the spiritual, not the historical, not the, don't look at any of these other things. Look at, read the book and fill it, and that'll tell you whether it's true or not. Standard answer to every one of the end of their essays. Pray about it and feel good about it, and that's all the proof you need.
And I'd like to say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. It sounds just like a testimony meeting.
This is our testosterone money that there's something fishy with the story. Oh, man. Wow, that's some great research you guys have done on this subject. Lots of interesting little problems and goo and kind of sticky mess here, isn't it?
It's a mess. Anyone who can believe in a translation after knowing the facts behind the book, and then again, watch Dr. Lundwall's episode, you'll just sit and go, "What in the world? There is no way that this could have happened through any." Magic. It couldn't even been written so that it could be translated in the first place.
Yeah,
exactly.
Very interesting.
Well, and next time we're going to dive into the first vision accounts, so it's going to be even more entertaining.
There you go. Yeah. Our next
that'll be good.
Vision, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's a very huge testimony builder.
It is.
Yeah, I think.
No, it's not. I was at a ward party once, and I just happened to mention to a gentleman that was there. He said, "Oh, the first vision," and I said, "Which one?" I said 2 words. That was it. I didn't see him again for a year or so because he was visiting, and he'd left the church. And because of what I said, it sent him down the. All I said is, "Which one?" I mean, this is before they were, this is decades ago. But isn't that interesting? Which one? And it sent him down that path to research and discover.
Yeah, it's like that one general authority. I can't remember now. I made a video on it a while ago on the BYP Response where he said, or maybe it was that church historian where he said, you do realize that you have to be very careful about what you say. You might be responsible for someone leaving the church. And I go, hell yeah, I'm not going to be careful with what I say. I'm going to be bold with what I say. And I dang sure better make sure someone checks it out. And if it doesn't jive, they had better leave. That's not making me feel guilty anymore. That's helping me say, yeah, progress. If we want the whole historic truth. If these guys wanted to solve their problem, especially with all this Book of Mormon stuff too, quit being so literal. Easier said than done, apparently. So
easier said. And I think sometimes they move away from literal and then they have to circle back, because kind of the public opinion changes, they try to go away. Hey, there was a hat, there was a rock. And now people are like, no way. So now they're returning to that. That did not happen. So kind of like polygamy and the denial of Joseph's polygamy, right? It moves. Okay, that happened. And then a lot of people know it never did. So it's very cyclical, I find.
Yeah, that is fascinating. All right, you guys, is there anything else you want to add, Landon?
Happy Pioneer Day.
Oh, yes. Happy Pioneer Day.
That's tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow.
Yep. It's tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow we'll start the celebration tomorrow with you.
Oh. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Landon and I are going to the parade in Salt Lake City. I've never ever been before, but we got some awesome seats, and we're going to actually go and watch the Pioneers march by.
Well, at least those guys had a decent parade.
They had a good parade.
Here in Idaho, all we had was a horse with a stupid, 2-wheel cart thing, and they called the horse a tapir and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and somebody pointed out it is actually Pie and Beer Day. That's more what the post-Mormons celebrate. But Landon and I are just going to the parade so we can go, that didn't happen. There was never a hand cart. That's incorrect. That person wasn't there. That's where we're going.
Where's Brigham Young still? Is it on board the hand cart?
I would like to try a swig. You need 2 bits? I'll give you 2 bits. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, everyone, for showing up in the chat. It's been good to see you. It looks like they were having fun in the chat tonight, didn't it?
I hope so. I miss being there.
So we are a little running over, but we're going to call it good for now. We appreciate all your support and love, and Mormonish and I, of course, will be coming back together very soon for more of these church essays, which we believe actually help inform us as we include the rest of the story. Paul Harvey lives on, apparently. So we're going to head out of here. Thanks for showing up. Be good, do well, have fun, work hard, make lots of friends, don't stay up late. But if you do, have a pie and beer day.